Hello, I am Brock Stanton. I'm an aspiring meteorologist, and today we're going to be taking a look at what tropical storm Nicole will bring to portions of the Bahamas and a large portion of the East Coast. I almost said Hurricane Nicole. That's because it is expected to become a hurricane soon. But let's just take a look. So its current intensity is 55 knots or 65 miles per hour, and a pressure of 984 millibars. Now, if you're a little more familiar with weather, you might think that's a pretty low pressure for a tropical storm. And the reason that's the case is that the wind field in this storm is very, very big. This orange here shows the maximum radius of tropical storm force winds. And that's a very large area, and which basically shows that, yes, it's not the strongest storm right now, 65 mile per hour tropical storm, but its wind field is very large, so it's going to bring impacts well outside the center. And just to kind of start to get into stuff, so if you're in the red, that means you're under a hurricane warning. That means hurricane conditions are possible, if not likely. You need to be prepared for as such. And then blue is tropical storm warnings, same thing except for tropical storm force conditions. And I should define, just in case you don't know, tropical storm force winds are wind speeds of 39 miles per hour or greater, and hurricane force wind speeds of 74 miles per hour or greater. That is purely for wind speed, not for anything related to storm surge, flooding, tornadoes, or any other hazard that may come with hurricanes and tropical systems. This is just for the winds. And really, especially if you're under a warning right now, your preparations, especially a hurricane warning, your preparations should really be rushed to completion. And this is because if we take over at our arrival time, our earliest reasonable time of tropical storm force winds, I mean, if you're in the Bahamas, the earliest reasonable time is, by the time I get this video out, was basically already be here. And then by the Florida's East Coast, depending on exactly where you are, it will be like the earliest reasonable time is either going to be tomorrow morning, maybe tomorrow afternoon. And really, that's the time you want to have your preparations by. Because this accounts for if the storm arrives just a little bit earlier than what's expected, you're still ready, you're still prepared. Now, I've been talking about the wind speeds. The effect of a tropical storm or hurricane is much more than just the wind speeds. Actually, the most dangerous aspect of tropical systems is the storm surge. And this is what, unfortunately, doesn't do it for the National Hurricane Center, does not have them for the Bahamas, but this is the peak storm surge forecast, assuming the surge comes in at high tide, of what to expect. And along a large portion of the east coast of Florida, basically north of North Palm Beach, Florida, is expected a 3 to 5 foot storm surge. And that's significant. The definition for life-threatening storm surge is 3 feet or greater. So, that's the area that's expecting the highest. But even 1 to 2 feet or 2 to 4 feet, you still have to prepare for that and understand what that risk means and make sure you're ready for it and prepare properly. And also, I want to point out, I've been talked about the east coast of Florida here. Some backside winds in the storm. There's going to still be a risk for storm surge across portions of the Florida Panhandle. So even though it's not making landfall there, or at least it most likely won't, it could potentially, if we take a look at the cone here, maybe briefly reemerge over the Gulf. But even though the first landfall won't occur there, there's still going to be storm surge there. So that's something important. And then if we take a look at the rainfall here, this only goes out the first couple of days. So there will probably be a little more rainfall in portions of the Northeast. But we can see here where the greatest rainfall is going to occur. It's generally going to be east of the center, on the north and east side of the center. At least when it's making at least earlier on when it's making landfall in Florida. We can see here that 4 to 6 inches of rain is expected across portions of the Florida East Coast. So if we're taking a look at the rainfall, it not only makes sense we take a look at what that rainfall is going to mean. So this is the Weather Prediction Center's excessive rainfall outlook. And what this product shows is the chance of heavy rainfall that could lead to flash flooding within a 25-mile radius of the point. So this is for day 1. This lasts into the overnight and early morning hours of Wednesday. And we can see it's only a 1 out of 5 risk for portions of far southeastern Florida. And that's just because Nicole will just be approaching the region. Just really the outer rain events will be getting in. But if we go into tomorrow, we're going to see there's a 2 out of 5 or a slight risk, which is at least a 15% chance of rainfall exceeding flash flood guidance within 25 miles of a point. So it's a little bit higher. This is not like a super high end flash flood by any means, but it's something that's there and something you have to respect, especially when you combine with all the other hazards. And then when we move on to the day 3 period, it shifts further north and east, now into not just Florida, but now into portions of Georgia and South Carolina. And then, while this is more of an experimental product, we can see how it shows up. The system's going to move northeastward, and then on day 4, which is Friday, there's going to be a large area that has potential for at least isolated flash flooding across portions all the way from like far North Carolina up into New York and New Hampshire. So just a very broad area. And the details for this area is a little more uncertain at this range, but there's going to be a lot of rainfall and even some gusty winds. We'll get a little more into that later. But now what I wanted to take a look at was some of the model guidance for Nicole, as well as just might as well take a look at the satellite imagery of it. And unfortunately, as it's getting dark, we don't no longer have the visible satellite, as you can see there, or can't see there, it goes away. But we can take a look at our long wave, and we can see it's not the deepest convection around the center, but you can actually make out an eye-like feature forming. So it shows that this storm is approaching hurricane strength. I'm not going to act like I'm an expert at diagnosing intensity based off satellite images, but that's just one sign that the storm is strengthening and trying to close in on hurricane strength. Let's take a look at the model guidance now. So what we can see is this is our 18Z guidance, and most models right now don't bring it up to a hurricane, and you can see this model guidance is a little old since they have the initial intensity at 50 knots or 60 miles per hour compared to 65, but they're not really, the storm has been overperforming with the models a little bit with how fast it's intensifying. So while most models don't bring it up to a category 1 hurricane, a category 1 hurricane does seem more likely, in my opinion, and the National Hurricane Center's opinion, just based off the environmental parameters with the pretty warm water for this time of year. And yes, there is a little bit of wind shear and dry air around, but given the broad nature of the system and it's already in its current intensity, it does appear likely it will become a hurricane. But also you have to keep in mind, let's say this thing doesn't become a hurricane, stays a 70 mile per hour tropical storm. With how large of a wind field it is, it's still going to bring significant impacts. Like there's still going to be a fairly large storm surge regardless of whether it's a 70 mile per hour tropical storm, a 75 mile per hour hurricane, or an 80 mile per hour hurricane. Doesn't really matter. There's still going to be a fairly large push of water, especially north of where the center is. And that actually brings me up to something that I should mention, is that the strongest winds will be on the north side of this system thanks to a high pressure system from the north. It will enhance the pressure gradient. Let me just try and pull up a model here to show you this. I'll take a look at one or two. We'll start with the GFS. So let's just take a closer look. And here we'll take a look. This is the wind speed initialized a little while ago, and basically, if you're in the green, that's going to saying that the specific model has you in tropical storm force winds. If you're in the purple, it's hurricane force, and if it's in that red, that's going to be like around 60 miles per hour. And again, don't focus on one exact model run for this because it will change. Model guidance has been changing where this storm will make landfall. But the big takeaway from this is that the strongest winds will be on the north side. And this model, like right now, it has the strong winds, but it doesn't bring it all the way up to hurricane strength. But something to note is that by the time I'm recording this, it has the pressure at 991 millibars. We know the pressure is actually quite a bit lower than that already, so that kind of shows how it's already overperforming what this model has. I believe if I recall correctly, the H-Wharf brings it up to hurricane intensity, and just kind of show a little bit more on what I'm thinking. Maybe not for exact landfall point, but intensity. And we can see here that it will develop into a hurricane. I think it's probably going to do it sooner than what the H-Wharf model explicitly shows here. I personally think that it's probably going to become a hurricane probably within 12 hours. I personally think. I think the models are just underdoing just how fast it's intensified. It's intensified, if my memory serves me correct, about 20 miles per hour over the last 24 hours. So not the official criteria of rapid intensification, but definitely faster than what the models have been showing with this system. And but the thing is, like, just look how large the wind field is. Look, the storms here in making landfall, and the tropical storm force winds are all the way up here, along farther up in Florida, and way farther up. Let's just take a look at the GFS, and it'll just give us a broader view of it. Here, look, our storms way down here in southeast Florida, off the coast of southeast Florida, and our tropical storm force winds are all the way up here on the northeastern part of Florida. So it's just a very large wind field, and that's going to bring a large push of water. And then I'm just trying to show the spaghetti plot of where the models show the center of the system going. Again, really important to understand the impacts will go far outside this. But here, if we can see this, this is where the models show the center going. Most recently, actually it appears it shifted perhaps just a little north of what the 18Z model showed, with what the 0Z model showed. So that's something to watch. But we can see how the models take it across Florida, generally don't show it re-emerging over the Gulf, and then moving, and then accelerating rapidly northeastward, and then that will bring impactful weather on Friday to portions of the Northeast. Two things I wanted to just show quickly for the Northeast. I'll have more time to cover these in future videos since this is further out, but I think the two main impacts for the Northeast are going to be gusty winds and heavy rain. So to show this here, let's take a look at Friday. So you can see the strong winds down here, and this is what this specific run shows as let's get to the most recent, the maximum wind gusts. But realize this is one model run, couple days out. It's not meant to show the exact mile per hour wind gust like it shows, but just an overall picture of, yeah, the winds are going to be pretty gusty, maybe. And we can see here, like, this is real. I know it says Saturday there, but this is really Friday night. You can see how the winds are getting stronger. They're gusting 30 to 40 miles per hour along much of the Northeast, and especially along the coastline. They're getting even stronger here. You know, I don't know if the winds will actually be gusting 55 miles per hour on Long Island, but it just gives that idea that the stronger winds are going to be along the coastline. That much seems likely. And then just to switch it up, let's look at our Euro model. The 18Z only goes out 90 hours, so we'll see exactly how far out it will show us. I think it should show us this whole system here, but we'll see. Let's get to the 6-hour maximum wind gusts. And here, let's get into on Friday. They start off pretty calm, but they're going to increase. And you can see, yeah, they're really going to get going into the Friday night. And this is as far out as what the 18Z Euro will show, so that we can overall see how, yeah, the winds are going to be gusting quite strong. And again, especially along the coastline. That's where I think the strongest wind gusts will be, which makes sense because there's less friction. The other thing I just wanted to show quickly for the Northeast, and I should actually probably take a look at it further south as well. So we'll start in the southeast, is the rainfall. And again, especially further south here, you know, where the center comes ashore is going to determine where the heaviest rainfall will be. We don't know exactly where the center is going to come ashore yet, but we can see here it's generally going to be on the north side of the system. So really wherever it goes, wherever the storm makes landfall, north of it is where the heaviest rainfall will be. Let's just take a look here. Specifically, the GFS shows up fairly wide swaths of like 2 to 4 inches of rain, maybe localized amounts of like 4 to 6 inches of rain, most likely. Here, like we looked earlier in the video, across east central Florida. And then we'll just take a look at the Euro just for consistency's sake, like I showed with the wind, and then we'll take a look at this for the Northeast. And we can see here the Euro is a little different, but still showing probably the heaviest rainfall, at least for Florida, being across the east central Florida. Now if we take a look, here, let's play a little more through here. There we go. But now if we take a look a little further north into the Northeast, I think we're at least wise to go back to 12Z just so we can see the whole event. We're going to see the rain's going to come in, and we can see that the rainfall on this particular model on the Euro is further west. If we take a look at the GFS, we're going to see that it's further east. Here we can see. But you can generally see there's going to be most of the Northeast is going to see over 1 inch of rain. A lot of areas could see over 2 inches of rain. And So that could lead to localized flash flooding, and that's why there's that day 4 slight risk for flash flooding out. And, the details will become more clear. I mean, this system hasn't even passed the Bahamas yet, and now I'm trying to say what it's going to do in the Northeast. I'm trying to stay fairly broad with what it's going to do. But we can generally see Friday into Saturday, especially Saturday the further north you go. It will definitely be a rainy day. It's going to bring some, rather it's not going to be the type of day to be outside. That's really what I'm trying to say. But it at least appears likely to clear out later on the day on Saturday, but Friday, it's definitely going to be a rainy day for a lot of the Northeast and just not going to be a fun day to be outside. If you did enjoy this video, if you did find it helpful, please consider liking and subscribing, and I will see you next time. Goodbye.